So let's get started. Thank you all for joining. Looking forward to this, and I want you to think about the fact that you can ask questions anytime. And this is really training. This is part of ECC, sharpening the saw and getting better. And at least here at Lejeune and most ECC sites, we don't talk about anything until we've talked about safety. So I wanted to have a real quick discussion on safety. And here we're beginning to worry a lot about heat, for example. Going to be 91 degrees this afternoon. And folks haven't been used to it. It's been a kind of a cold spring. And so we've got the benefit of a fairly large number of projects and have done things. For example, we hired a former EMT as part of the safety group, and he looks out for heat stroke. But one of the things we learned is that giving water is really important to folks. But when you got a team that's not feeling well, it really helps to give them not only water, but some food. And we buy snack bars, take them around to the sites and give them water and food, and they recover a lot faster. So just a thought for all of you from safety, because we all can benefit by that. And it doesn't matter whether you're working at home or you're working on the job. So the agenda for today, and I was really taken by the title of this topic, and so I want to talk a little bit about art and why it's the art of selling versus the science of selling or other things. And then I'll go through a few other things. I get out of order in a couple of charts. I talk, relationships are important, meetings are important. We can't do anything without planning it. And part of that is having an agenda in front of you, knowing where you want to go and where you want to get to and when you're done. I have a couple other thoughts at the end, and then we can talk about what do I really want from folks. Because this is important to all of us. We want to make sure it's of value to us. So if I can get this to go down, am I on chart 3 now? Why discuss selling? Brian?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. And why is this important? Why are we spending the time to talk about this? And part of it's that, as I said earlier, we always need to be sharpening the saw, and there are all kinds of aspects of the business. This is one of them. But we've got a business plan that says we could win $451 million. That's a lot of money for ECC. If you throw away last year and throw away, I think it was 2013, I don't know that we've exceeded that number too many times in our history. And we have a lot of projects and we have good opportunities to get there, but it's a big challenge. So us talking about selling is really important, because the selling is not done until the contract is signed. Let's keep that in mind, folks. Where the other aspect of this is that we're dealing with the government. They're a little different than a lot of other clients. And we're dealing with the US government, but we also have foreign governments that we sometimes are dealing with, and we have commercial clients in some cases, and John can expand on that. We're dealing with somebody who has to deal with the government, building radomes. So lots of different kinds of constraints that we deal with. So it's important to understand that, because, and I'll talk a little bit about it somewhere along here, it's just good to understand some of those rules so that we know what we can do and can't do. I think the last bullet is really important to me, and that is that we are all part of the sales team. We may have a group that does marketing and a group that does business development, but every last person involved in this company, if they go over and they visit someone at the client's office and they talk to them and they develop a relationship with them, it always helps us and benefits us. It's and it might not be selling. I mean, the relationships we have with the secretaries here at Lejeune were the resulted in somebody calling us and saying, hey, they're giving COVID vaccinations today. You guys come over and get them. And the team at Lejeune got vaccinated in January. We didn't have to wait till April, and it really reduced our impact or the risk we faced as we were going about our job, but it's because we had those relationships at all levels of the client. And someone, the senior guys may have been afraid to tell us yes, but the rest of the group said, come over and get it done, and nobody stopped us, and we did it. But that's a good example. So every one of you are part of the sales team. Why is it so important? Another aspect of this, and I pulled this from, I went on the internet. I was looking at different concepts here, and all of these where I've said where I got it from. I've got links at the back of this presentation, and I posted this presentation not knowing any better under Teams training, because I think everyone has access to Teams training general, and it's right there in one of the folders. And when Natalie gets back, Natalie's away on emergency leave. But when she gets back, we may be able to post it somewhere else. Or if you're really anxious to get the presentation, just send me a note and I'll send it to you. Nothing secret here, but I wanted you to have access to go look if you're interested in more information. But why we sell is because we are really telling the world what we have to offer. And that's important because sometimes some of our sales come from other companies that don't necessarily want to take something on, but are looking for us to take the lead and them to help us. Or they don't want to take it on and they want that client to get something done, and they've invited us into it. So the more everyone knows about what we have to offer, the better off we are. It also is important because, as I said earlier, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to build relationships. And so all of you that touch a client, that have some kind of interface with that client, understanding how to build those relationships is important, and understanding why it's important. And it also helps build credibility with the client, because sometimes they're very cautious about going out and awarding something really important to them to somebody they don't know. It gives them confidence when they've got one of their most important projects that they're getting ready to award, that they can pick up the phone and call and say, Roland, I want you to put your A team on this job because it's really important to us. And that sealed the deal. And that's the kind of thing that's important. So let's talk about why are we talking about the art of selling? And I think if you really sit down and think about it, it's not a science. There is no exact formula that leads to success every time. You have to have a lot of experience, and you have to have a feel for what you're trying to get, where you're trying to go, what do they need, what are you really trying to do, all those kinds of questions. And there are some, and there's a really interesting article written by Jay Fuchs if you want to get into more details on it. But what we're really trying to do is not follow a consistent process. And years ago, I went through Miller Heiman training, and I suspect several of you here. And Miller Heiman is selling a product, and it's the science of selling, and it does a lot for you. And it's good to consider that, but it only gets you so far. It doesn't get you all the way there. So there is a science to a certain degree, and following a process, understanding prospects, understanding how the funnel works so that you don't chase everything, because you can't chase everything, and understanding what is your outcome that you really want. Clearly defining that science is important, but if it's not coupled with the comfortable, the alignment, the relationship, the non-scientific or non-rote, everyone is different, and how you get to something is going to be different in different cases. So you've got to have that, and we call it art here, but in how you use the skill to bring to close some kind of a project award. And maybe it's not a project award, maybe it's just a project confidence, so that later on you can win the award because you really know what you're doing and you can give them a good price. And that's, misunderstand anything I say today. We can only get you so far. We've got to have the right price, and we've got to have the proof of capability of doing it before we're going to win. But sometimes it takes a lot more than that. And so keep that in mind, and I'll talk about some of that. The first thing we need to understand is, what are we selling? What is ECC? What do we provide? And Manjeev, and I didn't give this quote here, but I'll give him credit for it. His best quote is, he says, we're a project management company. We're providing people that manage the process and the project so the client has a successful outcome. That's what we do. All kinds of different aspects, but in reality, it's the ability to manage. That's why every one of us are getting pushed to understand how, what is PMI? The PM, we're thinking about PMI, which is another science piece of it, and it's great. It gives you good processes, but if understanding that and then applying some of the soft side really makes us more successful. We have some unique, when people ask me in an elevator, what is unique about ECC? Well, we're probably the smallest worldwide company there is. We have a few folks that do a lot of things anywhere in the world. And if you have a problem, we can be there tomorrow. And you'll have senior managers in the company that'll get their hands dirty helping get your problem solved. And it doesn't matter whether it's China Lake, whether it's Santa Rosa and the fires, or New York City and the debris, or Camp Lejeune. Those senior managers that show up that make things happen. And in a lot of cases, you're talking Paul and Manjeev that are there. Our company comes together and makes things happen. And we are very good at identifying a requirement, and I want to talk about this a little bit, and putting together the right team to do it. We don't typically build a lot ourselves, but we can put together a really unique structure that built a 14 megawatt solar system in Hawaii. And the business structure to do that was really complicated. It was an unusual proposal, but we can do those things. We're really good at putting these deals together, putting good business documents in place so that the team knows what we're doing and everyone knows their part of it and how they're going to get paid, and the client gets what they want. And this, what we talk about when we talk to a client is going to vary depending on who the client is. And the best example of it is, if you're going to bring a map of the world, you better have about 6 maps with you, depending on where you're going. Because I use a different map in Honolulu than I do in Korea, than I do over in the Middle East or in Europe. Because every one of them are thinking about their world. And in Honolulu, their world is centered right there in the Pacific. And if you're in Japan, you'd better talk about the Sea of Japan and not the what is it? There are about 4 names for that body of water between the mainland China, the mainland, and the island. Sea. The Eastern Sea, so be aware of that. Be aware of those kinds of things. It's going to vary by client. That's the easiest one, but there are lots of other aspects to this. That's part of the reason I have a job, is because I spent 20 years in NAFAC and understand that system and that client, and I can translate when they talk, and they're talking English, but the meaning of what they're saying is different than what sometimes, if you're an old core guy, and we're having a really interesting discussion here at Camp Lejeune about beneficial occupancy dates. And I know it. I've been doing it for 45 years, but the core does it differently. And so some of the answers that we are trying to drive our client to, or our client who's hired a bunch of new folks, they don't understand their own rules. And we've just got to help them work through that. And yet when we talk to the senior folks over at OICC, they all agree. We all agree on how to do it, but it's down at the working level. It's not happening. And that's because the clients vary. And it's not just the client NAFAC, but it's that engineering tech that's working on our project that maybe came from a commercial project, just got hired for that job, brand new to it, and he might not know. And so there is no continue client that they're all the same. They're all a little different, not only clients, but even within the client. And then, as I talked about locations, what you're selling and how you're selling is very different. When you're in Hawaii, you better talk about the mainland. You don't want to talk about the U.S. because they will remind you that they are part of the U.S. As John has told me a couple times. You got the mainland, you got Hawaii, but that's a good example of the concepts there. You also need to be ready if you're sitting in a meeting with a client and you're talking about something and they just aren't interested, that you got to let it go. We're not politicians, and if you've seen a politician, you ask a really pointed question, he's probably going to give you a stock answer because that's all he's got something he wants to sell himself or herself, and they don't want to talk about problems or issues. And sometimes the client's the same way. For example, we just did a cleanup at Camp Lejeune, and there are folks that think of it as a PFAS remediation project, great environmental project. The construction guys are looking at it saying, these guys really figured out how to keep the project going and prevent any delays. They don't really care what it was we treated. They just knew that hey, there was some problems with the water. We couldn't pump water. We couldn't do our job. And we brought in some boxes and put them beside it and pumped into them, and the project went on, no problems, and we got it done on time and very little extra cost. And that's part of the shift of let's sell this the way the client's interested in it. So you got to know who your client is. The other thing that's really important is talk facts. And a lot of times in my business, and I catch myself doing it sometimes, we can do that. Well, sometimes we can't do it. And in fact, some of the best sales I've made are where I said, I can't do that for you, Karen. You're going to have to go back. Those guys think they can do it. Let them do it. And 2 days later, she's sitting there saying, I really need your help. Can you still do what you said you would do? And we made a lot of money on that. That goes back a few years. That was with anthrax. But don't promise something. Talk facts. Talk about what we can do and focus on that. And invariably, if we've got something the client needs, they're going to come to us, and it's going to be that much stronger because they know you're honest with them, that they can trust you, and you're not going to lead them astray. Which is, that next bullet: don't make promises you can't prove. Don't make promises you can't keep. And the last thing is think out of the box. And we as a company do that better than anyone. And I commend all of you and our team, and just want to keep us working that way because there's always a new solution. And sometimes we try to drive it to the solution that's easiest when in reality maybe be easier. We're talking about hangars today and not smoke detectors, but fire protection in the hangar. And the equipment that they want is going to take us 6 months, and it's going to be a huge problem for them. And it's like, well, why don't we just put the fire department in there until it's done? And when the equipment gets there, but they can operate. And that's an out of the box thought. Now it might not work exactly, but it doesn't have, we can't push that round peg into that square hole most of the time. And we really need to be ready to think out of the box. This wouldn't be a good brief if I didn't talk about planning, and that's all I put on the title there. Because I don't care what we do, we need to plan, and selling is no different. I don't go see a client without thinking about what are we going to talk about. Every interaction should be considered, thought through and planned. And every interaction with a client is a selling event, by the way. Doesn't matter what you're doing. If you can provide value to them, they're going to take care of you. So in your planning, you think you understand that you're going to meet with a client. It's, what do I need to get to? What do I want to accomplish? What do they need? understanding what their schedule is and what their business cycle is. If you're trying to sell some, snow shovels to them in the spring, probably not a good idea. Um, that's the kind of concept there. Understand their business, and the government has a very rigid business cycle, and it doesn't change all that often. It shifts because they got to deal with Congress. But understanding that business cycle, where they are, when they really have time. I like to set meetings on Fridays if I can, because most of our clients have they're on some kind of an alternate work schedule, and they have a day off so in 2 weeks. So if you catch somebody in the office on what we call it a Black Friday, when most of the folks are gone, they'll sit and talk to you for a couple of hours because there's no one watching them. There's no pressure on them, and they'll give you all kinds of information if you can catch them at the right time. So understanding that schedule it really helps you. Have an agenda, as I did here. Think about what you want to cover, have it written down somehow, and it might just be little bullet points on a napkin, but that way you won't forget to cover something because you got so far off on a topic that you spent too much time on it. You didn't get through the rest of the things that are really important. And sometimes, and I won't admit to this, but I might have called the secretary and asked her if the manager is in, and she'll pass me on to them, and they'll answer where they wouldn't answer me. They'll answer because it's coming from her phone. There's all kinds of ways to get in there and get somebody. And so if you really need to talk to somebody and they're not answering you and they're not responding to, say, emails or texts or a phone, and every one of those media work, everyone's different, so you got to understand who you're dealing with. But you might find somebody else in the building who you know and like, who will help you, introduce you, or get you connected. And we should never be afraid of that. And my good friend Rich Greiling, I know, has used that concept a couple times, and I know I have quite a few times. It works really well. And this takes time. So, if you got an hour meeting, you better have thought about and planned for it for a while. It may take you 2 or 3 hours to be ready for that meeting, and have documents that sometimes having props, as I call them, having something that we did, a report that they might really be interested in, a hard copy you can show them or hand to them. It's really good. Or that, and my good friend David Bluestein is sending GAO reports on other parts of the organization, because the folks you're dealing with probably could get bit by the same thing and they don't even know what happened. It's a great prop. Relationships, and I think if you've listened for a while here in the last 20 minutes or so, you realize that there's the science and then there's the soft side. And the soft side, everything I've talked about for the most part here, still comes back to relationships. And to develop a good relationship, I think you really need to care about your customer and want to provide for them. And that's not in all of our personalities. I realize that. And so some of us are going to be more successful than others. But there's been studies, and you might read what Josh Linkner talked about. People like to do business with folks they like and trust. And so to the extent that you can develop that trust, it goes back to something I said earlier: make a promise and then keep it. And next time that you want to talk to them, they're going to be more willing to talk with you because they know you'll deliver if something comes up. And whether it's a copy of a document or sending a quote in on time or whatever it is that they wanted, if you can deliver, they begin to trust you. That's the way to make it work. And so I didn't put a lot on this slide because this is important, and we're going to talk more about relationships. In fact, somebody tried to make it a science, and Jay Fuchs took this from something I was reading. I really like this process, except the last bullet's not his, it's mine. But you have to talk when you're meeting with somebody, talking with somebody. Don't say "I think." You either know it or you probably ought not talk about it. This is what ECC can do. This is what we did somewhere. This is why we're important. Express your expertise, it really helps if you've been one of them. Sometimes I'll be talking to a contracting officer, and I'll let it drop that I was warned for 12 years. I dealt with this a few times. I understand what you're going through, and that piece of information gives them a little bit of confidence in you, and they're more likely to listen because they know you've been through things. And sometimes it's warranted contracting officer. Sometimes it's, you put the PE on the end of your name, and that means something to them. Especially, we're talking about the Naval Facilities Engineering Command. They're interested in engineers, or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I don't want to say that if you're not an engineer, you're not important, because they really do see the team as important. But it helps having that background, because that's their world. Sell with personal touch and some empathy. You gotta feel it with them. They have to understand that you understand their problems, and that you can relate to them. And the other thing, and I appreciate everyone being on the call today. When I offered to do this for Natalie, it's everyone needs to continue to learn. I learn all the time. And I saw a really interesting quote from Albert Einstein. You never stop learning. And somebody as smart as him, it's really important to continue on no matter how old you are. There's something new to learn, and there's some tremendous value in refreshing that learning that you've had before. And I'll put a plug in for Kelly, because we had an outstanding, and we're going to probably regenerate this opportunity for leadership development. And it was a great course, and it really refreshed a lot of things that I had learned in the past, but it brought it all together, and it gave us a lot of new leadership skills that hadn't had before. And that's what learning does for you. It allows you to continue to be relevant. And that's not easy, especially in today's world. The way you do business is rapidly shifting because of COVID and some of the patterns that we've gotten into from COVID, and we just got to continue. I never would have done this virtually, say 3 years ago. It would have been very hard, and we wouldn't have been as comfortable in doing it, but we are now. Manage your expectations is really important. You have to know what you want to get out of any kind of an interaction, and then you have to recognize sometimes it's not going to happen because maybe you don't relate to that person. And so next time I'll send Brock, and Brock will get it done because he relates much better to that person. You shouldn't be afraid of doing that. And it takes a really strong personality to say, you know what, I can't make it happen with this guy or this gal, and I'll find somebody who can, and we'll be successful. And then above all, everything we do, and this is one of our core values, is the honesty within ourselves. That's why in leadership we talk about tagging somebody, and because even Manjeev will admit, hey, I didn't read that email, I didn't have time, I've been busy. Tell me about it. So as long as we're willing to accept and be honest with ourselves and our team, we're going to be far more successful. And it helps you in building a relationship with our client if they know that when you tell them something, you really mean it. So we've thought about relationships. Now we're going to go work it. We're going to meet. And my client, and she the client here at Lejeune, it's really interesting because I'll call her and I'm going to say, Megan, can we talk about this? And she said, well, how are you today? And she's really working to, are you feeling well? How's the family? You got to talk about family. And and I always say, I'm sorry, you're right. Let's talk about personal things and build that piece into talking business. And there are some places that some cultures where that's really a negative if you don't talk around the relationship first and then get into the business. So keep that in mind. Remember, and I don't care what it is. You could, maybe it's sports. Maybe they're into sports, or they've got a family. It's really important to them, or their health. Whatever it is, have a little personal touch first, and then follow your agenda. And you remember we did that in the planning part. We've got a little agenda. We know what we want. Now, I wouldn't follow it one by one, because what I find is I'll put items down. I put bullets beside them, not numbers, because I let the client kind of drive the process to the extent I can. They're much more comfortable that way. And so I may hit the last bullet first. I may hit the first bullet towards the end. I just make sure I get them all. I check them off as I'm going. But I kind of let the process flow, because sometimes you might spend 20 minutes on something. It really helps the relationship and helps solve a problem, or gives us some information we need. And you don't want to give that short shrift, because you might learn something you didn't even have on your agenda. And this next bullet is probably the most important one. And I've had several clients tell me, I really appreciate your coming, because I always learn something while you're here. We know stuff that our clients don't know. As we learned recently on a call talking about plow, they don't even know what their partners are doing, their associates are doing on the next island. So to the fact that we can tell them what's happening in industry, what's happening maybe in other organizations, tell them how this works somewhere else, they really appreciate that. And next time you call, they're going to pick up the phone and talk to you, because they know that it's worth talking to you. So, and you got to think about this sometimes. Sometimes I won't make the call just yet, because I'm not ready to make it worth their time. And as soon as I get something good that makes it worth their time, and sometimes I have to go find it, then it makes that call work that much better. And then you really need to follow up. And a thank you is, I'm calling it a thank you, but it might just be an email saying, hey, after our discussion, this is what I found, and here's the copy of that document you're interested in, or whatever it is. That also gives them confidence that you're going to follow through on what you promised. And the last bullet is one that if several of you have been on calls with me know I like to do, and that I'll start some of this discussion. And some of the best calls I've had are where I said, I know you can't answer me, Vivian, but please listen to me. And I'll go through something that's, let's say, in procurement that's really important, and tell them this is how it's affecting us. And they can't tell us anything that they don't tell anyone else, but there's no limit, especially if you're talking to the contracting officer, no limit to what you can say to them. And so you can get your point across, and invariably number one, when you say that, they get more comfortable, because most government folks are a little scared about talking to contractors, because they've probably been beat up somewhere because they said something they shouldn't have. And this makes them really comfortable, because they know that you don't want any secrets. You don't want them to do something wrong, but you want them to know that if they don't answer this question, it's going to have a big impact on it for industry and how to bid it. And your job might cost $2 or $3 million more than it would otherwise. And most of the time they won't answer you. But every once in a while, I'll get someone to say, oh, I really thank you for that, but I don't care. We're going to do it this way. So, whatever. But many times what we learn from that discourse, especially when they say I don't care, is well, maybe this is good, and let's see how we can use it. And I'll talk about that later. And I've just for your planning purposes, I want to finish at about 45 minutes. I think she had an hour, but I'm not going to take that long. So how do you start that relationship? Think about what they want to know about you and what you want to know about them, and ask some of those questions. Ask them, and this is a great question that Manjeev and David and others ask all the time. What keeps you up at night? What's really important to you? because it might have nothing to do with our project or what we're trying to sell, but it helps us understand them better. A lot of times they're doing, it's not your fault. And I'm guilty of saying, a lot of times they'll say, I understand it's not your fault. You can't pay us for this, but can you tell us who in headquarters is driving it so we can maybe talk to them on a global level? We recently sent something saying, the administration changed. Maybe there's some new policy on COVID REAs that could help us here. And can we relook at some of the issues that we've had? And that's about as high a level as our client as it gets. But sometimes they're limited in what they can do, and that's where thinking out of the box really helps us. Some of our clients, this next bullet, really like to text. They're not talkers. They don't like to get on the phone, or they don't like emails. There are clients that will only read four or five words. So if you give them a 2-page email and the punchline is at the end, forget it. They'll never even see it. You got to tell them right up front, I recommend you do this. And then explain why, and they'll read more, and you're much more likely to be successful. So you got to understand that. You got to understand how they operate. That's part of developing that relationship when you talk to them. It really helps to know what their insight colors are. If you can get that. One of the best things we did on Master Clock was we did as a part of partnering, and our CM didn't want to do partnering, but he agreed we could do some training. We did insights, and it was great because initially about half of the group wasn't really interested, but after they saw the insights of the others who had done it, and we talked about personalities and how to work things together, they all wanted to get their, can you send me another link and I'll do the insights now, because I want to know about myself, and I want to be able to share that and work with others better. And it was a great way to build some relationships that help run that project smoother later on. So it's a value we offer that we really understand. It's something we can use to sell ECC. And if we're positioning and we want folks to understand what we're doing, you got to talk to them somehow. You got to understand, you got to talk to them about what elements that are important to them. And then we've got to help them understand what elements we might want to be important to them. And I'll talk about that a little later, but we've done that in different places, whether it's Ascension, we're working at Antinian, and we're working to get there in Palau. All islands, Ascension's in the Atlantic, and Tinian and Palau are in the Pacific. So influence the requirement, and what I was just talking about. How do we make elements of that procurement maybe more important to them than would have been different? And that's one aspect of it, and it could change the structure of the contract. Should it be a cost reimbursable contract or a fixed price contract? And we may want to drive it one way or another, because the way we bid that contract might mean we want to do fixed price work, or we want to do cost plus work. And we sometimes don't want competition, and we understand how to work with risk. We understand how to analyze, evaluate, determine the value of risk, and then account for it in our bidding. And a lot of our competition doesn't like fixed price contracts. So if we can convince them in the structure of the contract to be fixed price, we're going to lose some of the competition, and we're going to be in a position to be more competitive and maybe win a job we might not otherwise. Think about what we offer that others can't, like being there tomorrow. If there's a hurricane and they want someone there before the hurricane, doesn't help if you say you can be there 2 days after. And we can be there. And I quite often talk about, Mike Davis standing at the fence, and they wouldn't let him in, and our competition didn't show up for 2 more days. And we were there and ready to go, and we can do that. Doesn't matter what the conditions are. We'll figure it out. We're good at out of the box. And we just always have to recognize that very seldom is any requirement locked in stone and fixed. There's always some fluidity there. And I use the word fluid, not flexible, because it's that, flexible is too rigid. Things change sometimes very quickly. And I wanted to talk a little bit about China Lake because it's a great example. There are some visionaries that when the earthquake occurred down in that part of California on the 4th of July, they saw a potential and we started working this. And it turned out the client had $4 or $5 billion worth of damage. They were trying to figure out how they were going to go forward. And we started giving them information and giving them briefings and talking to folks and getting to know people in the community because we're going to need help there, but people at the base. And when they decided they really needed some place for contractors to live and sleep and eat while they're working there, because there weren't enough hotels and we're going to have so many, they started to work putting a project out for it. And so we had built on those relationships we already had built. So some of the selling was done early, before they were ready. And as they were looking at their requirements, they were debating cost plus because they could move quickly versus fixed price. And we showed them how you can be just as fast fixed price. And we really wanted it to be fixed price. And they were going to use a contract vehicle that we had never done a task order on. And we were only a minority partner in the JV. But by making it fixed price and convincing them the risks that they face would be tremendous, and getting them concerned about that they put it out fixed price, and we ended up as the only bidder. And it's a great example of how you can influence the requirement, but it's got to start early. You've got to have those relationships, and you've got to have good facts. Look at what could happen if you have cost plus contractor going, and you've got to watch that. You're going to spend a lot of money watching it, and you're going to end up with a lot of risk because you're not going to have somebody who's going to tasked to manage a job like they are in a fixed price, or the risk of bonding. We convinced them that they should bond that job because there was a lot of risk if it failed for a variety of reasons, and you're going to have to go get more money, and this is taking money away from your projects to do this. You're going to have to get that much more money to correct a problem that might happen. If you got a bond, you won't have to do that. You got a bonding company. And it turned out, as I said, we knew our competition, we knew our client, and we've got a very nice project. We got 2 projects at China Lake, but the labor camp is phenomenal in the aspect that it was almost purely a function of the selling that was done by ECC and appropriate selling, and everything perfectly legal, but just getting the client to recognize what their real risks were and then dealing with it. So this works. We use it a lot. I can't, in the 45 minutes to an hour I can't teach you everything. But be willing to listen and learn. And everybody in this company, from Paul Sabrawal and Manjeev Vora on down, are happy to help. And I highlighted in yellow the key aspect of what we're doing. We're not selling ECC. We're selling the fact that we're going to help the client get what they need. And whether it's a place for contractors to work, whether it's a roof on their building, doesn't matter. We're selling. That's what we're selling. We're going to make you look good in many cases. And that's one of my biggest statements I like to make is, how are we going to make this client look good? Because if we make them look good, they're going to come back to us every time. And you need to be comfortable in this process. And like I said earlier, if you're not comfortable, maybe someone else should do it, and don't be afraid to ask. This is not necessarily easy. And for some folks, it comes very naturally. And then for the rest of us, you kind of got to learn to do it. You got to recognize your personality and what you can do to prepare yourself so you can be more successful. But you've got to be comfortable in doing it. You got to be yourself. Don't try to be somebody you're not. It'll show through, and that honesty that we're trying to, and that credibility that we're trying to get across to that client, because that's the basic aspect of all that we're doing here. Once they feel that you're honest and you're credible, they're going to listen to you, and then you're going to be much more successful. So just be aware of that and think through it. And what I want every one of you to do, and there's lots of folks on the call here, is step up and be a part of it. Don't be afraid. Talk to folks, and if someone asks, or if you get the opportunity to say, hey, we could do that, do it. Don't be afraid of doing it, and then get the rest of us involved. And I put the term team on there because one of the things I've learned at ECC, and I didn't see it in my prior life, is that we are so strong together, and we really like being a team. We don't do much without at least 5 or 6 of us talking about it. And it's not uncommon to have conference calls with 20 people on it, and we'll talk through it. We work very well as a team, and that team aspect of ECC is another great part of being here and being part of this company. So yeah, you might go out and do something on your own, but the first thing you do is you bring others in, and you use that team. So I see that as your assignment. I don't think we can do any training without telling folks, giving them assignments. So I've talked my 45 minutes plus one, and I'm really open to questions if anybody has questions. Let me see. I don't see anything, or if you want to type them into the chat, you could certainly do that. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Roland, that was really a great overview. I would say that, the difficulty, our clients being, first, you've got to make it fun, right? So every time we get to talk to a client, no matter how difficult it is, if we get personal with them and we find, look, they're struggling, we're struggling, we might as well just, have a little bit of fun in the discussion, even if it's a tough subject, and, find something in common that we can laugh about, and, take responsibility where we need to. Let's not put them on the defensive, is my point.
Yep.
But
And I love the fact, Paul, you and I are exactly opposites, and you always, the first thing is, let's make this fun. And it makes me so much more effective when you do that. So thank you.
Yes. Good. Well, I know, because, this is serious work. It's difficult work. The missions are all very serious, and everybody is stressed and under, lots of metrics for schedule and budget and quality and safety. And I mean, there's so many layers of requirements that both make the job successful. Those requirements basically create expectations that allow the job to be successful from a metric standpoint, but it also puts a lot of pressure on everybody in the client organization and in the contractor organization to perform. And so there's all this natural tension in this work that we have to fight hard to find the fun in it. And, but I think what I've seen in the last year and a half, 35 years, it's always been, we got to grip and grin, right? We got to get out on the road, get into those client organizations, navigate our appointments, try to find our way into their buildings, even when they don't want to meet, try to find a place on a job site where they're going to be willing to talk to you. And it's been more and more difficult over 35 years to get those appointments, right? Everything used to be, you make a phone call, you can go in, you can walk the halls, you can, get a lot done. And then everything just gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. So, now we have these, this Teams program that a lot of our clients are migrating to or have migrated to, where they are really much more accessible than they ever have been. And we have to have the courage to make those video appointments with our clients and test the system out and encourage them to use it and get their cameras on, because we can really do a lot through this, and we don't have to wait a month or 2 months to get an appointment, and this awkwardness of getting a conference room and who's going to sit where, and is it going to be outside in the parking lot, or, it's just so complicated to get face-to-face meetings anymore, universally. There's always, an opportunity here or there. So I think really using these new tools, and getting your virtual backgrounds or your real backgrounds set properly. I think there's a lot that we can do as a company to put the right image forward, and making sure that we are presenting ourselves when we are on these video calls with our clients, and and with each other as well. I'm sure we've all seen a lot of really funny stuff in the last year.
So Brent has a question about lanyap and talking about lanyap, and that's something that's been always important to ECC, and it's the part of providing something extra that distinguishes us on a project. Do you do a color that they really wanted that wasn't in the spec, or do you do something better than they wanted? And that's important, and that's another aspect of how we become the client, the customer, or the contractor that they want. And that client may go to us if we've got a similar price and a similar capability, because they know we're going to give them extra. We're going to find ways to give them something better than what they wanted. And maybe it's faster, maybe it's whatever. So we kind of fell off that track for a little while when we were having some financial difficulties. But we need to get back to that. We need to talk about that more. It's a good point, Brent.
Yeah, just to be clear, it doesn't have to be something physically extra to the project. It might be something as simple as a piece of the relationship that really needs attention, or the project manager on the client side is looking for a promotion and maybe writing an article and letting him be sort of a co-author on a paper that goes into the SAME magazine or something like that. Those kinds of things can be lanyap as well. It's really understanding what's important to the client and then focusing on it.
And that's exactly right. That's why I spend so much time talking relationships, because you learn about the client that way. Hey, Marco had a question about how do you balance? It's a really good question. How do you balance between making the client happy and making a profit? And one of the things is, Brent just told us, these two fit together. Sometimes it doesn't cost anything to make them happy. If you're doing, think out of the box. And sometimes we can do it differently and give them a better product and still make the same a better profit. And I've seen that happen where our tasking the team to find a way to make that client happy on something actually caused us to look at the project differently, approach it differently, and it turned out it was a better way to do it. And if we had just spent more time up front thinking about it, and you got to recognize when we bid a project, sometimes we got 30 days, we don't have a lot of time. And the best time you have is after award. You might have a little more time to think through it. You might have come across something new in the intervening time. So we should never be afraid of relooking at the project. We just need to recognize the fact that the clock is ticking. And if I've learned nothing in the last 2 years at Camp Lejeune, it's that you get the project done early and everyone's happy. You got to keep pushing hard and keep the project moving forward.
Roland, there's actually a little bit more to that, some of the happiest clients I've ever seen at ECC have been on the projects that were the most profitable. I don't think that the clients are happy if you're not making a profit, but if you are making a loss on the job, they do seem to be unhappy, because our projects that tend to have lower client satisfaction across the board are also the jobs where we lose money. So I don't see the nexus, though it's counterintuitive, right? Intuitively, you would think, oh, the client's going to be happy if we're not making a lot of money. But the reality is that if the project is struggling money-wise, it's also probably behind schedule and it's having a lot of rework quality issues. And there may be some safety incidences that are slowing the job down, and there's not good partnering. So the job is struggling for a whole bunch of reasons, and it will lose money. Now, the jobs where you have good safety, good quality, good partnering, and you're on schedule, those tend to be the ones that are making money. So I think if your job is losing money, your client is probably unhappy because you're probably behind schedule.
Paul, that's 100% correct. Same is true when people try to do a fake trade-off. Do I want a safe job or do I want a project that is on schedule? You cannot trade off safety and production because good production comes through excellent safety. Same is true with this. If you're not making money, then your job's not properly planned, properly laid out, and it's not going to have good client relationships.
Mm-hmm. Right. And back to having fun. It's hard to have fun on a job that's losing money because there's so much pressure from the client for schedule, from the company, from the subcontractors for payment. It means the subs are probably struggling. So everybody is in tension on losing projects.
Yep. One of the things we're having an open discussion about clients. It's important, like Roland said, to understand their personalities. And we at ECC think of fun as a positive word. Some of our clients think of fun as a trivial word. So in the partnering we were doing on the Bahrain WLOS, the Navy captain in charge specifically had us take out as part of the partnering charter, have fun. He said, we're not here to have fun. This is an important mission. This is not here to, and we kind of explained to him what having fun means. He said, oh, I get it. I just don't want it in the partnering charter. So that made us realize, that when we are talking with this particular client, this particular person, we want to make sure that we are serious and we are factual. And immediately told us this guy's probably very blue and has a lot of red in it, so he doesn't want us to be lollygagging or appearing to enjoy ourselves.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey,
and those kinds of interactions are really important because you never know who's going to be the next admiral. And that's one of the guys that we think might be. So, having that relationship with him and understanding how to work with him could be really important to us 5 years from now. So it's great that we were able to learn that. Partnering is so important to us. Every opportunity we get, we need to partner, and we need to encourage the client to partner. And sometimes they don't want to do it.
And Roland, you may have covered this in your presentation, but our clients do tend to stick around for many decades, and they show up in different places at different times when we least expect it. So if you have a great relationship, it will pay off in the future. If you have a bad relationship, it will also pay a dividend, a negative dividend down the road, because they will show up again somewhere, somehow. And just because you don't think they're any good doesn't mean that the government isn't going to keep them and promote them and put them into really important positions in the future. Olivia, you have your hand up.
Yes. Sorry, I have a lengthy question. I don't want to bore everyone. Roland, I think it was really eye-opening strategy that we convinced the client to stay on firm fixed price and using an existing contracting vehicle so that we eliminate some competition. But my question is, don't we inherit more risk as well when we stay in firm fixed price? And what risk control measurement have we been taken, especially like what risk measurement has been passed down from the proposal and estimating team to the whole operation team, like contracting? Everybody needs to be aware so that we stay tight?
Yeah, it's a good question, Olivia, and especially this is a great group here because we got 90 plus people, and some of them don't sit on proposal reviews and pricing reviews every day like some of us. So one of the things that we always have a risk tab, any proposal we do, even if we're not going to show that to the client, we'll have a risk tab and we look at the risk. And this company, better than any I've dealt with, understands how to analyze and evaluate and come up with what are the risks. And they can be pretty broad and then deal with each one of them. And we look at, do we mitigate it? Do we pass it on? Do we add money? And we would much rather mitigate it by, say, passing it to a subcontractor or convincing the client to change, clarify the spec or take some of that risk because, and I've had luck doing this, going back to them, it's going to cost you $2 or $3 million to do this. But if you write it this way, then, you know, yes, you're taking some of that risk, but you can better manage it. So we do go through that process, Olivia. Now the challenge we have, and as part of we win a contract, one of the first things we do is we kick off the contract, we do a transition meeting. It takes a long time. And part of that's because you go through that risk that we risk register that we went through, and you talk through every one of those items and you make sure everyone on the team knows what we've done and how we're dealing with those risks. And it also teaches them to see new risk, because new risks will pop up, but you want everyone focused on if there's a risk as soon as it pops up to identify it, to talk about it, and let's figure out how to deal with it. And so it's not a perfect process, but I think it's pretty good. And because of that, we would prefer to go after projects that have more risk because there are a lot of companies that won't touch them. And it puts us in a better competitive position. It's one of those things that we offer to the client that we're selling that others don't do. Okay, I've kept you my hour plus a little bit. I'm sorry for that, but I really appreciate it. And I would put a plug in for Natalie, and that these meetings I think are important. Every month we should be doing something and talking about it because we're all going to be better for it. And if you're interested in presenting on a topic, you know, just tell Natalie or tell Paul or Manjeev or me, and we'll make sure we give you an hour to talk about it. So thank you.
Thank you, Roland. Good job.
Thank you, folks.
Roland, one final question.
Sure.
Did you have fun?
I did have fun. I had fun putting it together, reading all the different articles.
Fantastic.
And thinking through that. So, and there is a link at I didn't even, gosh, I just skipped out of the program, but the last page of the brief has links.
Great. Thanks for doing this, Roland.
And it's posted. If you want a copy, I'm happy to send it to you.
And your buddy Ethan wants some negotiation strategies with the client, so you can have a one-on-one mentoring session with him.
Okay, take care, all.
Ethan just walked to Roland's office.
Thanks, Roland.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Yep, take care. Bye-bye.